Still recording. Oh. Thank you very much, Amy. I'm going to hit the gun. All right, it's now 7 o'clock. In as much as everyone's here, I think we can get started. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is George O'Neill. I'm the chair of the Inland Wetlands Commission for the town of Thompson. As you are probably aware and are participating, this meeting is conducted over a platform called Zoom, and there's certain protocols we should adhere to. I think one of the important things to keep in mind is that it's important to, if you're speaking, to turn on your video and audio and be asked to be recognized like as you would in any other type of meeting. The meeting is being recorded, so it's a matter of public record. I'm going to dispense with a lot of the standard stuff I cover in my presentation. However, it's important that we be mindful of individuals speaking and not interrupt others. If you become unruly or if you speak out of order, the chair does have the option to have you muted, and so that you won't be a disruption. And I think those are the key points to keep in mind. I think after 2 years of Zoom, I think we're all pretty good at it. So I don't need to bore you with it. And to be expeditious, I'll move on. The time is 7:01, and I'm calling the roll call. Commissioner Obert, I see you're can you say present? I don't hear you.
Yes, I can. I have to remember to mute again. Okay.
It's muting. Okay. Commissioner Morano?
Present.
Commissioner Chapin?
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. And George O'Neill, chair, and I am present, obviously. No appointments for alternates. Action on the previous minutes meeting. Any changes, modifications, or corrections? They were distributed in advance and are available from the website. If none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as filed?
Make a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting.
I have a minute for motion. Do I have a second? You unmute yourself there, Commissioner Obert.
Yes. Yes, I will second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded to accept the minutes from the last meeting. Any opposition? Hearing none, the minutes of September 13th, 2022 are recorded as and accepted. Any citizens' comments on the agenda items for tonight's meeting? And while you're thinking about that, don't forget to unmute. I'll ask that this is an important part of our meeting, that citizens have an opportunity to comment on agenda items, that you need to confine your address all questions to the chair, and that we stick to the agenda items. There will also be another opportunity at the end of the meeting, toward the end of the meeting, to make other comments. Any comments? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to the first agenda item. And when I do this, I'm going to switch over to put them in front of everyone so we can all see it. So if you give me a moment, I'm just going to do that. So let me get my share screen. And if I could ask our moderator to open it up so I can share my screen. There we go.
All set now. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you very much, Amy. Let me just find this document. I'm just looking on screen too. All right, here we go. Let's see how that shows up. I think we need to make it larger. Yeah, there we go. You think it's just default to 100? All right. I take it that everyone can see that, or I hope you can.
Perfect.
All right, good. For those that are just dialing in, put the agenda item up and move to the current items. I'm sorry to scroll. Sorry to delay. All right, first item is agenda item old applications E1. It's WAA 22027. And A.S. Joseph, 0 La Pierre Road, formerly 23 La Pierre Road, assessors map 79, block 62, lot 47A. Construct a 570-foot long driveway in the 100-foot upland review area for a new single-family home. Stamped received 9/8/22. issued 9/14/22. Legal notice published 9/23/22. End of appeal period 10/31/22. Marla, do we hear anything on this or?
Yes, so there was no appeal of the legal notice and it's a final decision. But I did put a special condition on number 1 on the approval conditions because originally the plans I got were via email. And so the condition that I put on it was that prior to the start of construction, the applicant shall submit to the Wetlands Office the full-size plans signed and sealed by the professional engineer that were emailed to the Wetlands Office on September 12th, 2022. And you'll see the plans on page 9 of the Zoom documents. It's a very long driveway, and virtually the entire length of the driveway is through the 100-foot upland review area because there are wetlands scattered throughout this property. And this property was originally Mr. DeRocher's, and Ronald DeRocher, and he is the one who was building the driveway. However, it's owned by Mr. Yosef.
Okay, I put up the primary septic system cross-section, which indicates those items you were referring to.
Mhm.
All right, so you, in the conditions. are
No
on the
action
previous-
is
No action is required at this time then.
correct.
All right, so we can move on, I guess, unless there's any questions for Marla on this point. Okay, hearing none. Not doing too well with this sizing tonight. All right, moving on to the next item, which is a new application. It's DEC 22028, Michael O'Brien, 61 Lakeside Drive, Assessors Map 143, Block 16, Lot 57A. Construct a 12-foot by 18-foot porch on residential home in 100-foot upland review area for aquatic reservoir. Stamp received on 10/31/22. What do we have on this one?
Okay, so this property was the same property that was the subject of Jessica Gervaisi's application. That's the Girls with Tools. She came and got a permit for this site for, I believe it was a deck or porch. And then Mr. O'Brien decided he wanted to add on to the porch, and the location of his property is shown on Zoom page number 11. It's identified in blue. It's on Aquatic Reservoir. And if you scroll down to page 12, we start with the application because it's an existing home. It's a use permitted as a right under maintenance and enjoyment of residential home, as opposed to applying for a wetlands agent approval, which would have cost $110 and had a legal notice. I felt that this was something that could go through as a use permitted as of right. And being that there's on page 15 of the Zoom documents, it is a diagram showing the location in yellow of the proposed porch or deck porch. And if you scroll down to page 16, there is a the 2016 LiDAR contours, and you can see the house there, and the porch would be located in the upper left-hand corner of the house. So it's quite a ways away from the lake, to the extent that even though there's a steep slope, I don't foresee there to be any impact to the lake at all, and no other work is proposed. So this would require an approval by the commission as a use permitted as of right, maintenance and
Okay.
enjoyment of residential home.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Do we have a motion, Commissioner Obert?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve this DEC 22028, use permitted as of right to build a porch 12 by 8 foot aquatic Lakeside Drive.
Right, as listed, and do I have a second?
I'll
Who-
second.
Okay, Commissioner Morano made second, so I have a motion made in second.
Discussion.
Discussion, yeah, discussion,
Yes.
any discussion, questions?
no excavation. They're just gonna have to dig some foundation holes and sink in the footers, right?
Correct.
Sonotubes.
This is constructed, would be constructed on sonotubes.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought, and thanks.
Any other questions or discussion on the subject of this application before we vote? All right, hearing none, then I'll get on the list for votes. Commissioner Obert,
Aye,
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Morano,
Aye.
Chair O'Neill, aye. The vote is unanimous. The application is approved as applied for and as detailed in the application for a 8 by 12 foot or 12 by 8 foot porch. So moving on to the next item, we have any items received after the agenda was posted.
None. None.
Okay. All right, then we have permits and extensions. There are none. So moving on to violations. Okay, for violations, we have a complaint at 22-08 drainage problems at 117 New Road. Calabro Assessors Map 154, Block 3, Lot 2H. 119 Kennett Assessors Map 154, Block 3, Lot 21 and 20. I'm sorry, is that 2I and 2J?
2I.
2I and 2J. And 0 New Road, Gray. Assessors Map 154, Block 3, Lot J. Man-made watercourse beginning on 117 New Road, affecting abutting properties, determine course of action. What further developments do we have on this?
Okay, so if you would go to page 20 of the Zoom documents.
Okay, we're there.
This is an area that was subject to gravel mining by River Junction Estates, as well as by Strategic Commercial Realty, a wholly owned subsidiary of ONG Industries. Originally, it was an 11-lot subdivision. 3 of the lots, the 3 that are to the north, where you see that ponded area at the top of the map, that is the home of Douglas and Mrs. Gray. And then they purchased the land to the south of them, as well as the former Star Road property that was owned by River Junction Estates. Both of those lots were River Junction Estates. Towards New Road, just to the south of the Gray property, is the Kennett property, 119 New Road. That's the Kennett property. And then 117 New Road is the Calabro property. And if you scroll down to, there are other properties in that map, but I'll talk about that later on my wetlands agent report regarding 81 New Road, but I put the map here just for reference. So if you go to map page 21 of the Zoom documents, this is the 2016 aerial photography in with the 2-foot LiDAR contours on it to show what was there in 2016. The Kennett property you see in the central left portion of the map, and there's an open body water to the rear of that lot. That's where Strategic Commercial Realties over excavated materials and then subsequently filled them back in. They did this apparently in several areas on this piece of this 11-lot subdivision, over excavating, then refilling it with other materials. So at the time, originally, let me just get my notes. The complaint originally came in from Mr. Gray earlier this year regarding runoff coming from the Calabro property draining into property that he had purchased from River Junction Estates, which is undeveloped at this time, and was concerned about runoff coming not only from an underdrain that he said was placed at the septic system for the lot, as well as a well that was drilled that had an artesian condition that was discharging water constantly into the front of the Calabro house and draining into the property that he had purchased. If you scroll down to the next photograph, by the spring of 2019, the majority of the mining operation was completed and no homes were yet built. You can, however, see, if you look at the Star Road alignment, you can actually see the water course coming out of Rhode Island. It's in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You'll see a water course. It's a little dark line,
We see it.
squiggly kind of line. And that is a channel that comes down from Rhode Island and enters into the property that's owned by Mr. Gray, and then continues on into land that's owned by others and dissipates. And what happens is the channel actually does not stay confined. The flow does not stay confined to one channel. It actually migrates around and disappears into the ground during non-frozen times of the year. So the Calabro property, you can actually see where there's a channel that almost, that's it, that heads towards the Calabro property
Up
from
here?
this photograph. Correct. Now, if you scroll down to the page 23, this is a from MapGeo. It was a Google satellite picture taken sometime in early 2000 or mid 2022. The reason why I say it was mid time, because the trees are leafed out. So it's after, it's got to be after May, but it was clearly still in the summertime. You can see the Calabro house on lot 2H. And you can see the Kennett property on lot 2I. Okay. So if you can scroll in, enlarge this view so that you focus in on the driveway just in front of the Kennett property.
Is that close enough?
And if you can enlarge it, just enlarge it.
How much
Keep
further?
enlarging it until you keep further, a little further. That's it.
Oops.
All right, so that's okay. That's good that you could scroll in that far. My screen is
300%.
not
40%.
refreshing it. Okay, so now you can see the Calabro house, and the Calabro house has, to the left of the house is a pond, and that pond is being fed by a well that's located immediately to the east of the pond, and it discharges through a channel that goes under a culvert under the Calabro property, heading towards the Gray property to the north. And then you also see a runoff, what would appear to be water flow, coming from the yard area of the paddock. There's a barn there that was built on the Calabro property. That's the portion that is to the east of the house. See, the houses looks like an L. That's the barn. And there's a paddock to the north of the barn. And if you go back and look at the topography is trending towards the low area where the water is flowing. So there's a couple of places where water is coming into the water that travels onto the Gray property, at least this was in probably early summer. So back in, this would have been it was on March 22nd, I got an email from Mr. Gray regarding drainage concerns of this water coming onto his property. And so I ended up going out I told him that that was when I was recovering from surgery for my leg and I couldn't go out right away. And I ended up emailing, let's see, Sean Copeland. I got an email from Sean Copeland for 119 New Road in April, on April 12th, because he wanted to widen the driveway to the Kennett's property. Now, you recall the Kennett property, which is lot 2I, got a wetlands agent approval for the construction of the driveway. And that was issued back in June of 2021. At that time, there was no water flowing through the channel. You'll notice that there's a channel that comes parallel to the gray driveway, the undeveloped land, and travels on the north border of the Kennett property, on the gray property. And you see that kind of dark line as you follow the Kennett's northern border. That dark line is actually representing probably a high water table or water flow. That's correct. And it traveled down along the driveway towards New Road and then turned its way into in front of the Kennett property and then goes into a cross culvert under the Calabro driveway. No, does not go into the Calabro driveway. It goes across New Road just before the Calabro driveway, which is the labeled New Road. That's the Calabro driveway. So at the time in May, when Mr. Copeland asked for to extend the driveway to the Kennett property, I went out and took a look and found that there was water flowing in that channel. And when I traced it back, I found that it actually came from the Calabro property. So on May 21st, Vice Chair Aubert and I went out and did an inspection, and I photographed the conditions. That was the first time that Vice Chair Aubert visited the site with me. We got an application to expand the driveway. It was individual permit back in May of 2022 to expand the driveway because now there was a water course that was there that was clearly flowing for more than just a storm incident. And they received an individual permit to expand the driveway so that they had better access for emergency vehicles and box trucks and that kind of thing. And that permit was issued back in June to the Kennetts. Subsequent to that, in August 2nd, I did another inspection with Vice Chair Aubert, and at this time, Mr. Gray was there. Mr. Calabro was invited to join, but he did not show. And at that time, Mr. Gray said that he didn't want any water coming from the pond or from the paddock on his property at all. And he said at that time that an under drain was installed near the septic system into the hillside that runs with water into the pond. He also said that Calabro dug a ditch on Mr. Gray's property that diverts water that runs along the property boundary, and that also subsequently drains into his property. So the question was, is the ditch along the driveway and on the neighboring property a possibility? We were looking at how could we best, Mr. Gray did not want the water flowing the central part of his property. You can see by the dark color on the air photo where the water was flowing. And Mr. Gray did not want that water going through the central portion. Obviously, it would have affected any future development. And this water course did not exist until Mr. Calabro dug his well and had an artesian condition that was continually feeding the area in front of his house with water. And Mr. Calabro built a small pond. Now, at the time that he built the small pond and drilled the well, there wasn't a regulated activity. There were no wetlands or water courses at that location. I was able to find out that he did, when he built the septic system, which is located to the south and west of his house, that he did install an under drain in the upland review area. And I've gotten that confirmed by professional engineer Norm Tybo, who did the design for the septic system and did the as-built drawing. I've been expecting to get a a plan from him that shows the as-built location of that under drain along with the septic system, but I haven't received it yet. So there actually is a violation regarding the under drain installation in the upland review area. So subsequent to this, there was a site visit on October 25th. And at that time, the flow of, oh, excuse me, let me back up. There was another time that I did visit the site with Cynthia Dunn, the zoning enforcement officer. And she and I took her out there because we were out in the town on other business, and I wanted to show her the barn and the paddock and the concerns that Mr. Gray was raising about nutrients leaving the site, the manure from the horse operation, the runoff through the paddock that would drain through and into his property. And that had me a concern as to where this water that would have contaminants in it would finally reach the 5 Mile River. And so I wanted to make sure that whatever water came from the Calabro property took the longest route. And at the time I had suggested, when we had visited with Mr. Gray, I believe it was in August, that consider running a trench along the back line of the Kennett property to connect up with his ditch. And that way the water would not be flowing through the central portion of his property, which he took objection to. But he took objection to also the water being discharged into any portion of his property and felt that it was a violation of town regulation or town standards to that discharge. He had a second side issue regarding a roof discharge pipe coming from the Kennett property and discharging actually into the ditch. And I've had photographs of that. I have spoken to Mrs. Kennett, Deb Kennett, and suggested that she might want to consider, if at a minimum, at least cutting back that pipe so that it's not cantilevered out over the channel, but to consider installing a dry well with an overflow relief that could drain off into a lower portion of the property or into the Gray property. And she said that she would, consider doing that to address that concern. Well, unfortunately, what has happened is if you scroll down to page 25 of the Zoom documents, these photographs were taken on the 25th of October. And if you zoom in, you can actually see that there is an embankment now created between the Calabro house and where that water used to flow into the central portion of the Gray property. And that's right in front of the garage. If you see the garage, there's an embankment now. It's the material is disturbed so that water no longer flows through the central portion of the Gray property. Instead, it is forced to travel down. If you go to page 26, the Calabro has excavated a small channel along his driveway in an attempt to carry the water off of his driveway and off the Kennett property. I had gone out there at one point in time when I was out on other business and noticed that there was standing water on the rear of the Kennett property. I didn't get a picture of it, I'm sorry. But this picture on the 25th shows that water is clearly flowing down towards New Road. And if you scroll down to the next photograph, I turned around and took a picture going in the opposite direction towards New Road. And you can see that the water is getting absorbed into the ground. And for the most part, it's not reaching New Road because the driveway actually raises up, the elevation raises up a little bit. And so it is being infiltrated back into the ground. Well, this is fine during low flow conditions or fine during times when the ground is capable of absorbing the water. But when the ground becomes frozen, particularly during spring thaw, you can expect that there will be a flooding problem. So I did speak with Mr. Gray on the 25th. And while I was photographing the pictures that you see on page 28, I was actually on the Gray property, and you see the Kennett home in the background on the upper left-hand side of the photograph. And you can see that the channel is in the central portion that still remains on the Gray property, but the portion that extended into the property has been filled. And you see a stake there. That stake is, I believe, the corner boundary of the Kennett property, the northern corner boundary. And if you scroll down to the next photograph, I took a picture of what I believe to be is the rear property line of the Kennett property and the Gray property. And in the background, in the upper left-hand corner of the photograph, you can see the Calabro house. And in the upper right corner, you can see a concrete truck, because that is where the Jody Arpin is building her home. And that was one that came through with a wetlands agent approval. At the time that I had seen on the 25th of October, I noticed that there was ditching that was occurring on the Arpins property. And apparently Eversource had told the Arpins that they couldn't build the driveway, they couldn't build the underground utilities the way they wanted to, and they were going through a portion of upland review area that they had not gotten an authorization for. I've since modified that wetlands agent approval, and that issue should be resolved. What it leaves us with, if you scroll down to page 30, this was what I was suggesting as an alternative to address the drainage concerns of the parties, to prevent the Kennett property from being flooded, the Arpin property from being flooded, as well as the Calabro property. There is a channel. What I was able to determine was that because the well was drilled, according to the well drilling report that was dated March 4th of 2021, the well was completed in its drilling on February 19th, 2021. So that pond, that water flow, that permanent water flow was created in 2021. And Mr. Gray and Mrs. Gray purchased their property in December of 2021. So at the time that they purchased the property, the water was already flowing through that property, or at least into that property, and maybe being absorbed. But obviously you can see from the photograph that was taken earlier this year that there was evidence that there was some kind of wetness through the central portion. Currently, that cannot pass through there because Mr. Gray has blocked that flow, and now the flow is attempting to go down the driveway and it's not making it. So when I spoke to Mr. Gray on the 25th, I asked him to consider having a channel to the rear of the Kennett property, because I had spoken to Deborah Kennett, and she had indicated that she would not object to a channel being built on her property to carry the flow from the Calabro property across her rear line and into the ditch that existed, that previously existed before the Grays bought it on the Gray property. But that because of past actions that she'd had with drainage problems in another state, she did not want to do anything that would be objectionable to Mr. Gray and Mrs. Gray. And so that's why I asked on the 25th, Mr. Gray to consider letting a channel be created on the Kennett property, outside of his property, but discharging into the channel that is on the Gray property. In response to that, Mr. Gray submitted, and you have it starting on page 31 of the Zoom documents. And he said, "Hello, Marla, per your request, we are writing you this today to confirm our position on the ongoing drainage issues created by the resident at 117 New Road, Kevin Calabro, upon construction of his home and the well he drilled. We brought our concerns to you in March 22, 2022, only a couple months after we acquired the lot that borders Mr. Calabro's property at 117 New Road, Thompson, Connecticut. During the construction phase of his property, after drilling his artesian well, Mr. Calabro made a decision to install a pond and a culvert pipe from his property under his driveway to drain his excess well water and stormwater, directing it onto the lot we now own. This decision was done without permission of the owner, past or current, without proper permitting, and is in violation of town guidelines. According to the town regulations, it is not permissible to drain water to another property that you do not own. For the time the water did run from Mr. Calabro's land artesian well, it cut across the property we now own and created an obstacle to our plans to grade the property. We approached Mr. Calabro to let him know that we were going to grade our land and to fill in the area in order to give him an opportunity to address the water his well was creating. He did not make any adjustments. He was approached a second time after the stone wall removal project was completed. If you recall, the stone wall project was one that the Grays got a wetlands agent approval for on the Star Road property, the former Star Road property. The extra fill was being moved to the drain pipe area on our side of the property per your permission. He's saying my permission. He then approached me and asked me to hold off as he was going to have his site guy install a culvert to address the drainage problem. Approximately 2 months later, nothing has been done. Then he contacted the Inland Wetlands Commission and set up a meeting with you, Mr. Aubert, and me, and he chose not to attend, and to this day has not addressed the drainage issue. We took proper steps to ensure we were not in violation of any wetlands issues, and Marla, you as well as another professional came out, and it was determined that the area of our new property that was created by Mr. Calabro's well runoff was not a wetland, and we were told we could proceed with our plan to grade our property. I believe he's referring to the day that I was out there with Cynthia Dunn. As you witnessed and commented yourself, the water being contaminated by the 2 horses Mr. Calabro owns, he does not follow the manure management guidelines for Connecticut, where it clearly states in the zoning regulations in section 2 of Article 4A, section 3, next page. And he goes on to quote the current zoning regs. We have witnessed Mr. Calabro many times scooping fresh manure from his horse pen and spreading it all over his front yard. Most recently, it was observed on Friday, October 28th by a visiting friend and myself. And that day we observed Mr. Calabro spread 4 tractor bucket loads of raw manure on the front of his property. This affects the surface runoff water and pond water. The pond he illegally created with no permits. These issues would probably not exist if he followed the current zoning regulations and setbacks shown below. The zoning regulations that you see here, in fact, are the current zoning regulations. And these are also the zoning regulations that are being subject to amendment by the Planning and Zoning Commission, where the setbacks are being reduced. In the zoning regulations for the work he did within the 100-foot, the upland review area, installing the curtain drains, again, without proper protocols and obtaining permits. These issues have been created by Mr. Calabro, and it should be incumbent upon him, not the neighbors, to take proper corrective actions. We do not want this water on any part of our property, including the current ditch that borders the area on the back side of 119 New Road property. We have no desire for discourse with Mr. Calabro or any other neighbor. In fact, we've gone out of our way to be considerate as possible, as well as very patient. We are asking that you and the CEO, in accordance with the current zoning regulations, hold the responsible party accountable and require him to construct a solution that not only eliminates the improper drainage of his water, but also addresses the horse manure contamination issue. It couldn't be more clear who this issue belongs to, and the fact that anyone other than Mr. Calabro is expected to make accommodations or sacrifice portions of their land to accommodate his water runoff makes absolutely no sense. We are certain that there are solutions available to him to properly manage his artesian well and stormwater runoff safely and effectively without burdening anyone else. Additionally, we are still waiting resolution on the drainage issue from 119 New Road, which we first brought to your attention in March via email, and then again in April, when you corresponded with Sean Copeland, as well as 2 other face-to-face meetings we had on August 2nd and August 24th. We also are awaiting a response on our concern of all the water being directed across the street to our son's property on 118 New Road. When you came in and looked at it in April, you mentioned you did not believe the culvert was sized properly and said you would talk to the highway department about installing a larger conduit pipe or address the issue where the water was being dispensed, and that we have not heard anything on this issue to date. We have been more than patient on these issues, but need resolution before spring, when the water issues will be more prominent. Thank you for addressing these matters, and we look forward to solutions and your actions very soon. Doug and Roberta Gray. In response to Mr. Gray's letter, when we had a conversation on the 25th, and Mr. Gray said that I told him that he could fill the water course in. I never said that. I probably did say there probably weren't wetlands. It takes a while for wetland soils to develop, but I never would have said fill in the water course. That was a water course that was man-made. It was created prior to Mr. Gray and Mrs. Gray purchasing the property. There was no, as Vice Chair Aubert explained to Mr. Gray in the field, the Wetlands Commission could not regulate the creation of the water course, but once it was created, it could be regulated. And that Mr. Aubert did express to Mr. Gray in the meeting that we had on site. The problem is going to be is when the ground freezes, and I would like you to go back to, I'm going to tell you what page to go to, George. It's the one that's the 2016. It would be page 21. I'm sorry, that's my phone. And it's a spam. You can see that there's a water course that comes out of the River Junction Estates property, the property that the Grays purchased, and it travels through lot 2D towards the Calabro property. And right now that flow gets dispersed into the ground and doesn't flow into the Calabro property, but rather it sits on the hillside above the Calabro property and then takes a turn to the south and heads down through lot 2D. I'm looking at what you're doing, George, and it's not, it travels the see the circle, the yellow circle.
Right.
That's the area of concern that I have, because water's coming into that circle area and then has to make a right turn to the left and travel down the hill, down that way. Yep. And continues on to New Road. As long as the water continues to flow in that direction, there shouldn't be any additional flow towards Mr. Gray's son's property. However, if that water course breaches that hillside and ends up going into the Calabro property, there would be a much bigger concern. So there's a bunch of issues that are here, and I have asked Cynthia Dunn if the Planning and Zoning Commission had an as-built drawing of the gravel mining operation after it was completed. Because the zoning regulations call for as-built drawings when gravel mining operations are completed. That way, the commission would know what the grades actually were before anybody did any other work, and where the channels were, where the low spots were. She was unclear whether or not there was an as-built drawing. And so I contacted David Held, who is the engineer for Strategic Commercial Realty. And I asked him if there was an as-built drawing that he had done. He said he wasn't sure. But he would look into it and would send it to me if he could find it. So right now, what I see that the commission has is a claim that I told Mr. Gray, this is a claim that I told Mr. Gray that he could fill in the area where water was flowing, where the water course was, which he said he did. And now he does not want to participate in addressing the corrective actions that would prevent flooding of the properties of 119, 117, 115 New Road. The only alternative that I can suggest to the commission, if Mr. Gray and Mrs. Gray do not want to have a discharge in the rear from the rear corner of the Kennett property, then the alternative is the commission could issue an order to order the removal of all fill that has been placed within the limits of that water course. And the channel is identified from the photographs that you can see from mid 2022. You can see the path that water flowed. The other alternative is to take no action, and then all the property owners that are getting flooded will end up having litigation for damages that's potential. Mr. Calabro did not violate the law by creating an artesian well. There was no water course there at the time, but there is one there now. And so now to alter it, that does require an approval. I would love to see this resolved by having the ditch, which Mr. Calabro says he's willing to build, and Deb Kennett has said she's willing to have on her property if Mr. Gray is willing, Mr. and Mrs. Gray are willing to let the discharge be there. Absent that agreement, the only thing that I can see that the commission can do would be to issue an order to order the removal of all fill that was placed within the limits of the water course and restore the original flow, which I don't think helps anybody. And finally, regarding the agricultural issues, I have forwarded Mr. Gray's letter to Cynthia Dunn and asked her to pursue it. And she was going to check in with the Department of Agriculture regarding what their requirements are that are cited in the zoning regs. So I understood that Mr. Gray was originally here, as well as Miss Kennett, as well as Kevin Calabro. And I don't know who Dale is, so and I don't see Miss Kennett here anymore.
Marla,
But
should,
anyways,
are you suggesting that they may want to comment on this, or are you done with your
Yes.
comments on this?
yes, I think they should be given an opportunity to weigh in on what their opinion is of it,
All right, so
how
are
it should be handled.
any of the appropriate, any of the parties mentioned present? And if so, do you want to comment or add additional color to the situation that's been outlined over the past 20 minutes?
Yes, this is Kevin Calabro speaking.
Okay, so Carbo, could just give me your name and address. You got Kevin, but give me the rest.
Kevin Calabro at 117 New Road.
Thank you. Okay, please proceed.
Miss Butts, now what about the pictures that I submitted to you of the cat's tails with the because I mean I didn't just send the water that way. There was water running in that direction before I started building. I just kind of neatened it up and let it gather in an area there. And then the artesian condition that I have with the well, created the flow to be a little more consistent because, those cat's tails were very clearly there before I started building. So there was an intermitting water course there already.
Would you say the intermittent water course was also at your driveway?
Yes,
Then your driveway should have gotten a permit for it to build it.
I
And
was
so,
I was unaware of that. I
Mhm.
just applied for permits and built, and I deeply apologize. I honestly I had no idea that
well,
required
neither did
that.
I, because I signed off on the building permit the building permit application, because I was not aware that there was a water flow, or cattails in and of themselves don't constitute a water course. A water course has a very distinct definition from wetlands. A lot of people think that with cattails are growing, that's wetlands. Well, frequently they overlap. You can have an area that has poorly drained soils that also has running water. So you can have a wetland and a water course. And a water course isn't just a flow of water. It can be a swamp, a marsh, a bog, which is done by vegetation. But to be an intermittent water course, it has to have certain characteristics. And so the areas that were on the Gray's property that were in your photographs would have classed as a water course, not as a wetland. Cattails in and of themselves don't represent wetland soils. Wetland soils take years to develop the characteristics to call them wetland soils, but soils that are wetted to the point where they're growing swampy vegetation, marshy vegetation, and cattails would be marsh vegetation, they technically would classify as a water course. That water course was not there in prior photographs. In fact, while they were doing the mining operation, you could see that the mining operation, if you go back up to page 22, George, you can see that there was a flow, appears to be a flow that went to the Gray's Pond at one time. And that during the course of regrading the mining operation, that flow was obliterated somewhere, filled in. In fact, the pond on the Gray's property was created by the mining operation, by over excavating the material. It had no inflow. It was created in a non-wetland area. But by cutting down below the water table, the gravel mining operation created a pond that did not exist before. And as long as the mining operation was going on, there wasn't anything that I was going to be doing regarding regulating it, because it was an ephemeral thing. It wasn't necessarily a long-term thing. As you recall, on the Kennett's property, if you scroll up, George, to page 21, the Kennett's property had an over excavation area that also had a ponded area that no longer exists. This was all done during the mining operation. Apparently, it was my understanding, subsequent to this mining operation, when we were dealing with 363 Quatictown Farm Road, which Strategic Commercial Realty also did, that's when I found out that the mining operation was supposed to have stayed 8 feet above the groundwater table. And obviously they did not on this site. So they didn't follow the zoning regulations for mining. So there's a number of errors that were done here. The barn that was on the Calabro property building permit application said it was a proposed barn, but when the certificate of occupancy was issued by the building office, they included the barn because it was shown as part of the house in the as-built drawing for the septic system. So there were a number of errors that were made along the way on these properties. I want the concern that I have is there needs to come to a resolution so that nobody is really harmed. By harm, I mean nobody's damaged, physically damaged by the waters that are potentially flowing out of the Star Road property and towards these properties, and make sure that we don't have property damage other than water running down a channel. Did that answer your question, Kevin?
Oh, yes, yes. Like I said, I didn't know these things. I did not do them with any intentions of anything at all. Like I said, I just applied for permits and I got the approval, so I just assumed, things were okay and good. And obviously we have a problem here, and I just want to work with everyone here to resolve this issue of the water flow. Obviously, I cannot control nature and things that happen. So, but I just want to work with everyone here and get it resolved.
Thank you, Ms. Kennett. So I guess Marla, and I see Commissioner Obert has a question. Perhaps you can comment, Commissioner
Yes,
Obert.
and for the members of the community, I was referenced in that letter, and I was up there a couple of times with Marla and with property owners looking at this situation. And looking at all these pages 21 and following in the Zoom document, we don't really have the information that was in the original application before any mining was done. I think that was like in 2006 that the application came in, because I was active with the commission for a while and then I resigned until after I retired. So somewhere there must be more detailed on the records that shows where did that stream go through before any graveling was done. And yeah, I think it's cool and interesting that the guy's got an artesian well, but how much of that problem is because of the graveling? We couldn't determine that when we were out there. I agree with Kevin's comment that none of us can control nature, and you want to live in a nice, quiet little place, and all of a sudden you feel like you're the worst of the Hollywood B movies going on. Everything's going wrong. None of us wants that either. I agreed with what Marla says. We don't want to see the property owners or their neighborly spirit damaged by this issue. But we don't have that. We don't know exactly what was there. Not even the as-built when the strategic realty got done, violating and digging deeper than they should have. No enforcement. We don't have the budget for it. But all this stuff went on somewhere that there must have been the network of the stream going into Rocky Brook. And before anybody built anything, I looked at the 1934 aerial photos while we were talking about this, and it doesn't show good detail, but somewhere we've got to have a better idea, and hopefully it will teach us to tweak the zoning requirements, and we don't have another issue like this 5 years or 10 years from now. I'd love to see this solved.
So Charlie, I can answer your question regarding this property. Where the mining operation occurred, there were no wetlands or water courses originally. That's why they were allowed to mine it. When they came in to renew the potential mining operation, shortly after I got employed here in 2010 or 2000, about 2010. I think it was about 2012. Strategic Commercial Realty came in to redo the 8 lots, and they did stay out of all regulated wetlands and water courses that were identified at that time. what has happened is that the mining operation has created changes in water flow, subsurface discharges coming at locations where it didn't come before because it stayed underground. But now that that ground is gone, it's now going to pop out at different other locations. In this particular case, it was man-made by the drilling of the well and the water being discharged from subsurface drains. Has created a condition where water is flowing more persistently. That did not exist probably at the time that the mining operation was finished, but was created during the construction activities in part. The problem that I have regarding the Gray's complaints is that they purchased the property with these conditions already existing on the property. And I could not find any regulations that talked about these kinds of changes being prohibited. And the fact that they bought the property with the condition of water flowing through the central portion of the property and flowing down into the channel near the Kennett's property meant that they were aware that that water was there. So the fact that they object to it now, I can understand why they object to it. They don't want it in the central portion of their property. But to object to having the discharge from the Kennett property, from a channel created on the Kennett property, I don't understand. And I've reached out to the Grays after I got this letter and said, I don't understand about what the problem is across the street on his son's property, because there are no cross culverts on his driveway, and he has a driveway that's elevated above the wetlands, and his property is practically surrounded by wetlands. George, if you go, well, I don't think I have a map. Yes, if you go to page 20 of the Zoom documents, you will see the driveway. The lines, the boundary lines have all been adjusted. They are not correctly identified. I spoke to the assessor on this, and he said that Applied Geographics is scheduled to redraw the lines on that side of the road so that they're accurate, but all the lot lines don't match. But you can see the driveway coming off of, you see the term new road and a driveway heading south and west from that. That is the Gray's son's driveway, and his house is built on a piece of upland that is completely surrounded by wetlands. It's surrounded by the 5 Mile River and the wetlands that are border between his driveway and new road. That's where his house is. Yes, George, where you've got the correct. I don't understand what the drainage problem is that by placing the water into the channel here would create for their son across the street. And the cross culvert under the road, the town has no plans at this time to change the culvert. And in fact, the front of Kennett's property and the town property is acting as a detention facility during high flows. If you look at, if you go to page 23 of the Zoom documents and you look at lot 2I, in the front where along New Road, you see a area of green. That is a very low area. And now that's not, no, 2I. Lot 2I.
Oh, is L, okay. Oh, down
2I,
here.
that one, that's
Right
it.
here.
In front, there's an area of green, and that is a low area that the cross culvert under New Road, apparently, according to the builder, got blocked last October. And it flooded up during a weekend, and it filled up that whole area, and he unblocked it. And it had to do probably with the way the underground utilities were built by Eversource near the cross culvert, and that's acting as a storage area. So the ideal place for the water to flow is not down the Calabro driveway and directly into the cross culvert on New Road. The best thing would be to flow it along the channel that's already existing along the driveway between the driveway to the Gray's property and the Kennett property, giving it an opportunity to reabsorb into the ground and to renovate the water quality before it gets discharged underneath the road to New Road and head towards the 5 Mile River.
Okay, thank you for that
So-
analysis, Marla. So I think you've covered a lot of the important parts. Where do we go from here, really? It seems to be the sort of rhetorical question.
This is Roberta Gray. Am I
yeah.
allowed to
Yep,
speak?
well, we'd
Can you
like
hear
to recognize, yes, if you could name and address, and then you can be recognized.
Sure, it's Roberta Gray, 131 New Road, Thompson, Connecticut.
Okay, Ms. Gray, please speak.
Couple questions, I guess, that I have, because as has already been mentioned, you know, we acquired this land in December, and the property that abuts Kevin's property, and it was sort of a package deal for us that the land was grouped with another parcel that we were just trying to protect our privacy line. So we really weren't very diligent about, you know, knowing a lot about this land. We just said yes because we were trying to preserve our privacy. So when we started to investigate, we did not, and by this I mean, we did not know that there was a pipe that was intentionally built under Mr. Calabro's driveway at the time of the construction of his property, which I would be interested to know if he did have a permit to do that the pipe was constructed, the culvert pipe under his driveway, directing it toward this newly acquired property for us. At the time, it was owned by Alan Rawson. So the research that my husband and I, Doug Gray, has done, it has illumined that it is not permissible. And to discharge your water, the issue is the artesian well water is going into that man-made pond area that, by the way, those cat nine tails were not there. We've been here, we've lived here for a year and a half or whatever it was, 2 years before Kevin built. So we do have an awareness of that. It's just a matter of the water that's coming from the artesian well, directing through this man-made pond in the front of his property, which he surrounds with fresh manure, is being now, that water is contaminated and is being piped to this property. And when we had taken pictures and addressed our questions to Marla back in March, she came out, like she said. Then she asked if permission for a second group to come out, and I think it was supposed to be 11 people, but it ended up only being a couple came out to look at it. And Doug and I, this is the discrepancy that I'm concerned about, because we have done always our due diligence ahead of time to make sure that we are not violating the guidelines and doing anything against procedure. And that's why we reached out to you, Marla, because we wanted your eyes on it and for you to help us to understand what were our rights and what should we do. And when you came back out the second time with Mr. Obert, and I wasn't there, but Doug apparently was, but we both, again, we're waiting on the decision about the water course that was created across that property. And you explained to us, and again, because we are not trying to do anything against regulation, that it was considered not a water course. And the water had only been running for like a year. I mean, it was heading towards, as you know, that's our concern, because this artesian well runs 24/7. This is not stormwater runoff issue. This is water that is running 24/7. So that's going to create, and it started to, but it wasn't there long enough. And so we asked, is it okay? Because our plan all along was to grade that property because it's very hilly and it dips really low. We had an opportunity with my son's house construction to get some fill, that we had our plan all along that when they finished taking the stone wall out, we wanted to bring that grade up. We asked you, Marla, is it okay for us to proceed in doing that? And you told us it was. So we did. And we've already paid Billy Bulldozer guy $2,000. And we got the fill for free, but we had to pay for his tractor time to bring that fill in to start to grade out the property. So we have not proceeded with that against, again, the permission that we were given. And we certainly wouldn't have spent that money if there was any possibility that we would have to undo that. My question is, again, you know, and I would like to think Kevin can collaborate on that. We've been nothing but very, very supportive and kind people to Kevin. And we have overlooked many, many things, okay? And there are going to be issues when we go to sell this property or a portion of it, because the setbacks for the horses, even if it's going to be amended to 20 or 25 feet, he still doesn't meet that guideline. He's right, literally 12 feet from this property with the horses. And so there's a lot of violations that happened that, again, it's none of my business with how to, you know, enforce this. But now in terms of the lack of responsibility for, he put that pipe in, it's his artesian well. He did not, I believe, even have a permit to do that. So what I don't understand is, why is it not being proposed to Mr. Calabro to put some type of drainage pipe, culvert pipe along the side of his driveway with crushed stone or something that's going to start, you know, absorb some of the contaminants that are in the water from the waste management, and direct it towards the culvert at the end of New Road? I don't understand. That seems to me that, again, it puts the ownership back on the person who's created the problem. This is not the runoff from up topside. That's another whole separate issue. Because there's a swale that was made up there, again, that his site guy actually created that on a portion of our newly acquired land. So boundaries and, you know, are not respected. The issue that I shared that you didn't mention, Marla, of why we have a concern for the water going into the ditch along the driveway, is because that driveway is very narrow. And so we, at some point, would like to bring it over. And if that water is allowed to run, it is going to become a water course. And I would imagine that that would mean there would be setbacks to protect it. So that requires us to be able to, you know, manage the newly acquired land in a way that works for us, because Kevin has an artesian well that he's not properly dispensing. He's directing it onto someone else's property, and that's just not, you know, being addressed. Like, we have to somehow come up with a solution that includes the Kennett's property, our property, to accommodate this decision that was made by him and his site person. So that just doesn't make sense. And the fact that, you know, you had put out there that you didn't understand our issue about Sean's property, that was, you offered us Thursday, because I know you work part-time, and we weren't available that day to speak to you, but we have spoken to you about our concerns about it and what it is. And Donna at the building office corroborated this, is that the properties are all being funneled into that. Now, I believe, you know, I don't know exactly where the very new house, where their water's being dispensed, but the concern is where Sean had to build his driveway, the water runoff that comes from the properties across the street, forcing that water into his driveway area, will undermine his driveway. It's a gravel driveway. Over time, it's a lot of water to accommodate. So what we were asking was, can that be looked at, that we could maybe have a way to direct that water a little further up New Road, so that it was not going to directly impact his driveway? Because the fact that he's surrounded by wetlands is not the issue. It's that we don't want the erosion on his gravel driveway with all that water going where it's going.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gray. Thank you for those comments. And if I see we have Commissioner Obert with a question. Commissioner Obert.
Yes, the record will clearly show, and fortunately it's all on Zoom, so people can go back and look at it. from the first time I became aware of how one property was impacting the next and the next and the next, I predicted that this was going to be a heck of a problem for us to solve. We don't have the resources, but Ms. Gray is correct. We need to look at how the new dynamic is. There's a new dynamic here. I know that water flows from the area where that paddock is, and it currently goes across underneath the driveway, and it currently goes through part of that open field, which I believe you and your husband just acquired, and then runs down along the driveway behind the property that we've got the, where Chairman O'Neill is showing. And right at that last area, there's just been some extra work done for retention. It's all going together like a backwards patchwork quilt. And we don't have the resources to be able, nor do we have the real jurisdiction to be able to wave a wand and say, you know what, A, B, C, and D. This situation is something that's evolving. I hesitate to use the word, it's a fluid situation, because it is, but it's life, and life gets messy and it's going on. You're all doing something new out there, and there's a time where we need to be able to think, how do we do this once and not bicker back and forth and try to change things, but solve this problem? And maybe somebody at DEEP or somebody at DOT or somebody at UConn can help us. But it's above my experience. I'm a biologist, but this stuff is above my experience.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner Obert. You know, at this point, at this juncture, and I think we've heard Mr. Kent's comments and certainly Ms. Gray concerns, and it appears that it wasn't intentional, but it's sort of evolved, which was expressed by Commissioner Obert. At this point, Marla, can you frame for us, recapping it? It looks like it was a gravel mining operation. That activity created what is now regulated wetlands. We've had, at the very least, unintended consequences, or intended acts who had perhaps unintended consequences, or the matter speaks for itself. But what do you see as the three things that can be done? If we don't have the tools to identify those solutions, what additional resources can we bring to this discussion to find it? Because, you know, just for us to go in circles saying this is a problem, which I think we'd all acknowledge, without a concrete recommendation, you know, would seem to be more productive. So can you frame like three options or next steps for us to move forward?
So first option, regarding the concern about increases in runoff being generated to going across new road, that's an engineering issue. I'm of the opinion that the cross culvert on the new road is, and I'm not an engineer, is undersized so that water will continue to back up into the low area in front of the Kennett property during heavy rains, acting as a detention facility, thereby reducing the amount of velocity that potentially could reach the 118 new road. But that takes an engineer. The town does not have a town engineer, and the commission doesn't probably have sufficient funds to have something like that looked at. Regarding
is that a referral
piping,
before we move on? Is we get it. So it's not a sizing, it could be an engineering issue. So is that something you refer to the state or other department in this town to handle?
there is no town engineer, and so it would have to come through a contract if the town wanted to look at it. Right. For the errors that might have been made through zoning, right, planning and zoning concerns. All right.
Let's just leave it at that as a solution. Okay, that's one option.
That's
Engineer
one.
it. Correct.
That's
okay,
one.
okay. What's the next? What do you see as another choice?
The second one is rather than trying to pick up Mr. Calabro's runoff from his agricultural activity, having the clean water that is being discharged from the subsurface drain from the hillside near a septic system, as well as the artesian condition coming out of his well, have that piped along his driveway directly to the cross culvert under New Road. What happens in that case is you're only picking up the groundwater and sending it to surface water by New Road. That would reduce the amount of runoff or chain flow that could be causing problems. However, it would eliminate the pond in front of Mr. Calabro's house, which it didn't exist before, but that would be a potential solution, is to keep the clean water clean and let the water that might have been contaminated as runoff soak back into the ground on the Calabro property.
All right, so Leon, so I
because it's
understand
all
this,
very
you've got
gravelly
this well
still.
here, you've got this well, I'm putting it on the diagram. What are you gonna do? You're
Mm-hmm.
suggesting you get it piped, right, underground, down the road, down the driveway? Just down the driveway to
Yep,
the road and then go beneath it to the wetlands?
it would go into the would discharge just before the cross culvert
All right,
to go under New Road, so that the
option two
water
is to
would always be
repipe it.
flowing.
Redirect
Is
it,
to pipe
okay?
the- Right,
Who has the
redirect the
jurisdiction over
emerging,
that piece? Who has the jurisdiction over that?
the Wetlands Commission would
All right, so you
at
could,
this juncture.
at this juncture, we could say that it's an artesian well that could, you're right, you said one alternative would have it, direct them to trench it and put in a pipe and direct it to the road, New Road, and then it would go
Yep.
on to the wetlands. All right, that's option two.
Yep.
Does
Number
it have
three.
to go in a pipe? Does it have to go in a pipe there, or can it just be like create a stream?
Or channel. Say
No,
that's
the
just a channel?
there's not enough room to create overland flow for the entire flow. There's a rise in the grade near the Kennett's house on the Calabro driveway. So to create a channel that would free flow like it does on the Gray property
Right,
would have to get wider and deeper as it
Okay.
passes by the Kennett property.
got it.
That's an engineering thing that the grades would have to be to keep it as an open channel. It would not address the contaminants that potentially are in it. But that could take an engineering solution. So it could
Right.
be that Mr. Calabro could have an engineer take a look at providing some kind of solution to
Okay.
the drainage that's coming from his property,
Great.
stay and remaining on his property. Now, what you don't see here is another driveway is being constructed on lot 2G. That's the R pin,
Oh,
2G.
where's that gonna be here? I mean, was it in here somewhere?
It's in the
or-
back. No, there's a pool, there's
There's G.
yeah, back there.
That's G. Okay, where's the driveway coming in this way?
Nope, it goes parallel to Calabro.
Okay, so it just goes up through here?
This was right like that. Yep.
All right.
They're-
All right, so you're
they're
saying
sandwiched
option
together.
one was to, re-engineer this whole thing. The second is to drill it, to basically put a pipe in down this driveway because it can't, there's not enough room, so you have to bury it essentially. So you dig up the driveway. I mean, is there a
Mhm.
third option? Or do you see any other options?
Well, what concerns me about piping is the runoff that's coming off of the former Star Road property. Mr. Calabro's house has not been there very long. And my concern is that there could be a breach in the water flow that comes off the hillside, which now goes into lot 2D, might not continue into 2D, but might find its way going through the embankment on 2H. And then you end up with a real problem.
There's
All right,
another
so-
issue, there's another issue with
Push over.
pushing it into a pipe, and that is you can have a natural filter that really could neutralize the agricultural stuff by the time it got to a new
Yeah.
stream off of
Whatever.
the bottom end.
So it seems like we've got two choices, right? Bury it or redirect it and have an engineering solution. I mean, is that basically essentially it? I mean,
There's-
without.
there's a
I'm sure
third
there's
choice.
variation. Okay, what's the third choice? Do you
Third
recommend?
choice is you order the removal of the material from the Gray's property and let the water flow the way it originally was doing before the Grays bought the property.
So what
Or
exactly does
if the-
that mean? Exactly.
That becomes obviously something that is a legal proceeding. An order to remove fill from an intermittent water course, the commission would have the burden to show that it was a violation, and the Grays would have the burden to show that it was not a violation. And then the commission would be the one deciding whether or not that fill material would be removed. The only other alternative to that would be to have have a channel discharged onto the Gray's property from the rear of the Kennett property. Those are, you asked me if that's
Right.
the worst case scenario,
Okay,
which
so
the
where's this
Grays
fill?
would feel is
Is this fill up
unacceptable.
here? Is this fill up here somewhere?
Yep. Well,
Right.
no, it'd be on the Kennett property. Deb Kennett has indicated she's
Over here?
willing to have the channel on her property, lot 2I. And but
Over here.
she will not let it.
Over here?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
she will not want it to. No, the rear of her rear lot line.
Right here, I saw on the line,
Right
right,
there.
right, so the original proposed, that's
Right.
in one of your
She'd be
exhibits.
willing to have have a channel there to discharge to the Grays, but the Grays have objected to that. And she will not allow it if they object to it.
Right. So these are all, okay, so you got three, apparently, we've got three major choices here. And I would be interested in hearing what some of the other commissioners have to say on this, because, you know, certainly it's we're on the horns of a dilemma, I think is how I'd characterize it. So would Commissioner Chapin or Commissioner,
May I just mention something really
who is
quick?
this? I'm sorry, is
This is Kevin Calabro, 117 New
Yes.
Road.
okay,
I
Mr.
just
Caldwell.
I just want to make sure you guys are aware that the water that does come under my driveway consistently from the pond, that is from my artesian well and from my under drain, that is clean water. The only time when you have the nutrients getting picked up from the paddock is during an extremely wet season, which I have video of it, of the water that comes down from the woods. I don't know whose property it is up there, but it's not mine. It's up in the back, and yes, I did have my site guy dig a trench. A little piece of it ended up on the Gray's property because I was eyeballing it. The stakes were not in the ground, and I just asked my site guy to put it in there because the water was like a waterfall coming down the back, going into the horse paddock and creating all kinds of terrible mud. And that's very dangerous for horses. And, and by the way, too, I did measure from my paddock to the property line. It's actually 17 feet. I don't know if that matters, but, I'm just saying I'm not right on the Gray's property line there. Like I said, I when I applied for my permits too, down at the hall, I know the plans said proposed, but I told Donna, when I was applying for the permit, that I was going to go ahead and move forward with it, and that it was no longer a proposed plan. But like I said, you pick up all the nutrients though that you're talking about when it's really wet and the water comes down from the woods up in the back there, and it catches into that drain. Since all this started, Mr. Gray did fill in a corner of it and divert that water. I mean, it doesn't flow. It hasn't been flowing now. And like I said, it's got to be very, very, very wet for it to flow. And when it does flow, it flows like a lot.
Okay.
And he diverted it down towards his ponds there. So, I mean, as far as the water coming out of the woods, it's really just the water that goes under my driveway, which comes from my artesian and the under drain.
Okay, thank you for that additional information, which I think is helpful. So, you know, we spent like half hour going through the points. I know everyone's raised their concerns, and what I'd like to advance this process. It's hard to you can't necessarily make these types of decisions on the fly without full assessment and, you know, a plan of action, and also weigh the costs and consequences. So I'm curious if Commissioner Chapin or Commissioner Morano have any thoughts on this that can add to our finding a solution.
Well, it's obvious that we need to get some, we need to consult with people who find these sorts of things in their area of expertise.
Right.
And I don't know whether the Northeast District of Health could be of use, or the Soil Conservation Service. Obviously, there's an engineering issue, but I mean, I think that we need to find who in this area would be in charge of this kind of a jurisdiction, and perhaps they can give us advice.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Morano. Commissioner Chapin, any additional comments?
I guess, yeah, Commissioner Chapin, I guess my only understanding listening to this, because the artesian was drilled, that's what created this water flow, and that is clearly beyond the homeowners. You know, you don't know when you drill a well, whether you're gonna get 3 gallons a minute, no gallons a minute, or a geyser. So it's not like it was intentionally done. I think we should be looking for a solution. But I do feel like, as Fran just said, a lot of this is out of our jurisdiction. And I just wonder, you know, I mean, nobody's going to like this, but is a fifth option, or I don't know what number we're up to now, do nothing?
That's always a choice, right? I recognize that. But there are other alternatives. Based on our conversation and the testimony, if you will, of the parties, it strikes me that the most prudent thing to do is to have our inland wetlands agent formally frame alternatives and seek expert subject matter expertise, whether it's with planning and zoning, our land use council on this matter, as well as other resources, whether it's the state or others, to frame these options, because we're not going to come to a solution necessarily as it is. I do note that you recommended a redirection. It appears that based on our limited discussion or an hour discussion on the subject, that we have potentially 3 choices, and then we could put them out there and either have the parties embrace one and execute, or if not, then to the extent possible within the authority of a commission, exercise authority to direct a solution, or perhaps as a yet to be determined or identified alternative. So that's how I see this playing out. Now, any commissioners agree, disagree, or have any other recommendations?
I agree. We need to
Commissioner Obert?
we need, yeah, Charlie Obert here. We need to find a Rolodex kind of contacts for state and federal
Right.
and contractors who would be available, because we don't have this expertise.
Right.
And we can solve this. It's not going to be cheap, but maybe we can get some compensation from the guys that dug too deep.
Well, yeah, I think that's where council comes in. So thank you, Commissioner Obert, for that. So at this point, I'd want to advance our meeting and, taking due consideration to the comments of Mr. Calabro, certainly Ms. Gray, and candidates, those that have brought the issues before us. And I'd like to, before the next meeting, have concrete recommendations and, some actions. And if there are third parties that are yet to be identified as responsible, then maybe they could be part of the solution. But otherwise, I would like to move this forward, and also I'd ask our inland wetlands agent if there's any further action required on this by this commission on this point, at this juncture.
The only concern that I have is the timeliness as winter is coming and ground freeze is coming, and if this issue is not resolved before the spring thaw, there will be a lot of water. I've already seen water standing on the Kennett property, several inches deep at least in the rear where there was that former pond. And it's going to have to be resolved before the ground freeze sets in. So you don't have a lot of time.
Right.
That's the concern I have.
Okay.
And I also think that when spring comes, because nobody's been here, this land has not laid like this for long enough to know exactly what's going to happen during high flows and spring thaws, that we could see things showing up that we are unanticipated. Flows coming out of that hillside that were not expected to be coming out because of the ground being frozen. And to be honest with you, water will seek its own level. It will cause its own erosion when it does. And that's a concern to me, after having looked at the topography and knowing the systems that come out of the Star Road area.
Right. Well, there's some things that are certainly known, and you've identified those. There's certain things that are knowable, so we can determine those. And then there's always the unknowns and the unknowable, which we'll have to experience. So based on that, I would in this matter, I believe we should just move on with that course of action. I want all the parties involved to contribute. I'd like to see that happen. And before the next meeting, we're going to have a course of action to address this. You know, this is the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses. We're the Inland Wetlands Commission. We aren't the planning and zoning. There are other parties involved here, whether it's contractors and others. But you know, I don't know why we have a solution before us, but we certainly should have a course of action, identify a solution, implement that solution, monitor it, and make sure it's executed. All right. So with that, unless there's other comments, I'd like to move on to the next violation.
So can I just ask, this is Roberta Gray.
Yes, Ms.
the
Gray.
one who wrote, are you saying that a decision, definitive decision will be made before the next meeting and then it will be announced?
No, I'm just saying we're going to get the facts, because right now we have a bunch of concerns. We don't have a course of action. I'm asking our Inland Wetlands agent to gather the data to make a recommendation to the commission as to what course of action might be appropriate. So it could be an opportunity for you and your for you to express your interest on what solution that might be. But I'd rather have that rather than us all sitting here saying, well, all the problems, what do we do about it? I want subject matter experts to recommend what the viable solutions are. That's what I'm trying to do here.
Okay, and I know in light of moving forward, I'll just say that I think what is very concerning to me and to my husband is, again, nobody anticipates what kind of well you get, and we don't hold Kevin responsible for not knowing he was going to have an artesian well. Our point is that the decisions were made by his site person, that he obviously approved, that the dispensing that additional water that runs 24/7 was going to be displaced onto property that he does not own. So in coming up with resolution, what is confusing to me is that a couple things. One is that Marla is now claiming that she did not say to us that it was okay to fill that in. And I certainly, like I said, wouldn't have spent thousands of dollars to have that done if in any way I thought it was going to be retracted, because we sought her out for permissions. So I don't know what to do with that. But all we're asking is that in consideration of the solutions, that the burden be put on the person who created this, because this is not a natural flow issue. And so I'm not an engineer, but I would like to believe that there are some very viable solutions of what you do with an artesian well and how to properly disperse it on property you own.
Sure.
And you know,
Excellent point. Yeah. That's where the subject matter, that's where I agree. I think the subject matter experts need to come in on this, because this panel certainly has experience, but these are, very technical areas, right? And we do need some people to say, this is what can be done, can't be done, and it's viable. And I'm looking for solutions to that, or asking our Inland Wetlands agent to explore those areas within the town and come to us, this commission, with some viable alternatives. So that's part of it, right? The legal, right? The regulatory component, the other engineering components, if that's part of it. But clearly there's a situation that is unsatisfactory to a number of parties, and I'd like to see a path forward. Identify it. Let's come up with one that can be implemented or imposed as necessary if needed, and then move on, because and there's a time, as suggested by our Inland Wetlands agent, there's a time constraint too, right? Because there's unknown as how it's going to result, but the suggestion was that it would be not positive. All right, so
it's Commissioner Chapin. Marla, can I ask you, do you feel like you have a recommendation at this point, or are you thinking that we need the extra time to discuss and put forward a recommendation to the commission?
Well, I did have a suggestion, but after looking at alternatives, there is a second alternative to the one I originally thought was if the Grays would not allow the discharge of water into the channel near the rear Kennett's property. The alternative is, since the Penn house is being built and the driveway is being built, is to not have the water cross the road, cross the driveway, but rather run down between the two driveways, between the Arpen driveway that's under construction now and the Kennett driveway. There might have to be some adjustments on the Arpen driveway, but you potentially could get a channel there. Mr. Arpen suggested to me, was asking whether or not he could take that water and put it into that low spot in the front of the house, in front of his lot that originally was going to be under conservation easement, because I thought it was going to be a vernal pool, but I've been watching it for 4 or 5 years now, and it's never held water long enough. My concern then you'd end up with a pond with no outlet, and eventually it would overtop and flood somewhere. So you'd have to develop a controlled outlet for that. So there are some possible other options with other neighbors, but they don't own the property. So the answer to your question is the one with the Grays has its own legal issues with it. The one with Calabro dealing with it under his own driveway and connecting to the cross culvert is less contentious from a legal standpoint. And it might be a solution where he still ends up getting his artesian pond, but still having the runoff going down between the two driveways. There should be enough space because he has a 50-foot wide access way for his driveway. So maybe there's an opportunity for having it along between those two driveways. They are the Arpen and the Calabro driveway. I didn't even think of that, but that's a possibility.
Yeah, but thank you, Commissioner Chapin. But I think there's consensus that we need to have solid recommendations, and that doesn't exclude the individuals involved here saying this is what I recommend we do. So we might consult with the inland wetlands agent on what the solution is, which perhaps might be the best outcome. But with that said, any other comments on this before we move on?
Yes.
Yes,
If
Commissioner
we're-
Obert.
If we're going to be the ones that are going to referee this process, if we're going to find an engineer and we're going to referee this process, then that engineer has to know right from the beginning that he must talk with the neighbors and really know the history so that this problem can be resolved.
Yeah, excellent point, Commissioner Obert. That's why I've asked our inland wetlands agent to sort of facilitate that dialogue, and so that we can have a solution. Because right now we've identified a bunch of issues, but I'd like to see a course of action, actionable, identify actions that can be executed, and identify the pros and cons on this, and then we can don't have something to decide. Right now we're just identifying a problem and all the dimensions of it, which certainly is a starting identification. But let's move on to the solutions, and whether the Grays or the Calabros, everybody can come up with an alternative. That would be great to recommend to the inland wetlands agent who can pull this together for us. And whether it falls under jurisdiction of inland wetlands or it's multiple parts of this community or this town, then it's another issue. But I don't believe we have enough know all the alternatives yet. I think they're yet to be perhaps identified. So I would hate to do something that's premature, recognizing again that there are time constraints. But I think we've exhausted a lot of the important points, and the issues have been brought up. There's a complaint. We've discussed the issues. We've tried to come up with ask the parties and/or are working with our inland wetlands agent to come up with a solution to the extent it's under our jurisdiction. Because as you pointed out, Cindy was out there, so that's planning and zoning. So there's other dimensions to this. Then there's other parts perhaps we don't know yet. So I don't want to be premature on that. All right.
I want to make this clear. I want to expedite this. I don't want us to get together next month and say, well, now we've got an engineer and now can we spend the money? I want to expedite this. I want it to move forward so that we have some solutions to offer. Right.
If you have one handy, any of the parties could suggest it. Marla did suggest one. It does. I'm not hearing anyone embracing it. So, and then there's a cost associated with it, and who's going to do it. So let's frame it. If maybe that's the only alternative, in which case you can say this is what you will do. If that's the only alternative, and it's within our jurisdiction, and it impacts all the other stakeholders, but other parties or issues were raised throughout this discussion. So, thank you, Commissioner Obert. Other commissioners, All right, so in this case, I think it's pretty clear, Marla, that we'd like you to, frame the alternatives, formalize them, and take the input from all the parties. If subject matter experts are necessary, let's bring them to the party. And we'd like to have something we can take, ideally, something we can take action on or implement or direct by the next meeting. All right. Moving on to the next violation. Notice of permit violation, VIOL 21036, permit IWA 20022, Mark Bear, 1227 Thompson Road, Assessors Map 116, Block 24, Lot 10. Grades not as authorized or in modified plan approved by the Commission on February 9th, 2021. What is the status of this matter, Marla?
Okay, so I spoke to Mr. Bear several weeks ago by phone, and he's in the process of finding a builder for his house. And I'm not sure if he's looking to get some other contractor to work on site work or not. So at this juncture, there is no action that the commission should be taking on it, because originally it was agreed that it wasn't until the final grades were getting close and the house was done, because there's going to have to be walls built, retaining walls for the house itself. And then an as-built plan was supposed to be submitted to the commission for its review and approval. So at this juncture, until the construction on the house gets started, it's on hold still. But he is pursuing, he's actually looking to see if Brian Meehan, who is built Madison Avenue, the houses on Madison Avenue, if he would be interested in building his home. So he is moving forward, but kind of at a snail's pace.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much for the update on that item. The next item before us is the violation. Let's see here. I've got notice of violation VIOL 22008, Rodney LeMay, 0 Aquatic Town Farm Road, Assessors Map 160, Block 11, Lot 15. Unauthorized clearing, cutting, and grading in wetlands issued by acting wetlands agent 3/21/22. Status.
So now that the leaves are off the trees, Dan and I will be taking a site walk from a neighboring property to take a look to see if we can figure out if there's anything out there to be of concern, or if everything stayed quiet for the past months and no activities occurred. Because I have been unable to actually clarify from Dan whether or not there was actually any specific clearing of wetlands or water courses. So that is going to be going up in the next week or two before not week or two, the month or two before the snow flies. I'll be inspecting that with Dan. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. We have the 2023 meeting schedule. And
Scribner's error.
that's okay. It just caught me here. I don't know, can you guys see this one? Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. So, does anyone have any concerns?
I raised three questions. First is Good Friday's on April 7th. You identified a site walk on April 8th, which would be the day after Good Friday. And then Easter is on the 9th. So you'd have your meeting on the 11th. So the day off would be on Friday. We can do a wetlands meeting for Tuesday, the 11th, but remember, George, you had asked me a question about, do we have to schedule the Saturday site walk since we've canceled a lot of them? And the reason why I had included them is that we don't have to do special meeting notices. We don't have to meet the requirements of FOIA, but I would have no objection to eliminating the Saturday site walks as a regular schedule and only schedule them as special meetings. And that way you would shrink down anything that was on Saturday wouldn't be included. And that's the choice the commission can make, because it's not a requirement of your regulation to have a Saturday site walk, nor of your bylaws. It's just something that was always done by the time I came in. And a lot of times, some years you have no site walks, And then other years, like this past year, you've had like 4 or 5. So that's your choice, whether you want to eliminate the Saturday site walks and just use them as special meetings. When you tell me you want to have a site walk, you don't have to schedule them for Saturday.
Do we, just to clarify, do you have to have 2 weeks notice, 2 postings for a special meeting?
No,
No.
24 hours in advance has to be posted on the
Okay.
website.
So,
And
yeah,
you cannot change the agenda once it's posted.
all right, so
so
that's the, yeah, I
You don't
suggested,
have to have,
good.
that's okay. Then the
Yep.
other one is also Tuesday, October 11th. Columbus Day is the 9th. And I suggested alternative is the following week. And then same thing for November. November 11th is the day after Veterans Day. And it's just up to you whether or not you want to do them on those days, because those are long weekends usually. And that's a Saturday. The November 11th is a Saturday. So if you choose not to do site walks, you eliminate the 2 issues of April 8th and November 11th, and that just leaves April 11th and October 11th as questionable, whether or not you want to change the dates.
Okay. Commissioners,
I
Commissioner
have a
Obert?
question. Yes, if we were to eliminate site walks and only have them as special meetings, then would the calendar say site walk, and then instead of the date, it would say to be announced, special meeting? How would we put that
No.
up on website?
You just don't have anything regularly scheduled. And as you need a special meeting, just as with any other commission, you just post the agenda as required under FOIA. And so what would happen is you'd have a meeting, you had an application, you decided you wanted to go see the site. Then you'd say to me, we want to do a site walk on this date. And then I would have to do an agenda for a special meeting and get it posted accordingly. And then it would be held that way. The Planning
Yeah.
and Zoning Commission does not announce its special meetings in a regular schedule,
I'm
because they're
on
special
that vote.
meetings.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I'm on that vote. Eliminate them, and then we'll just, if when we need one, we'll tell you and
Good point. Okay, Commissioner Obert,
I'm also in agreement with that, but I wonder, should we have a paragraph on the website that says if a site walk might be required, it would be scheduled on the Saturday prior to the regular business meeting? And then
Nope.
we don't have to, then we inform the public and we can forget about it.
nope, my vote is no
I
on
can do
that.
that.
But I mean, I don't care if you do, but honestly, if it's decided at the meeting, if the public's interested, they can come to the meeting, they can listen to the minutes, they can read the minutes. I'm not a coddler, so my vote would be no on that, but
yeah.
I wouldn't object to it.
So I understand Commissioner Obert's recommendation is just not to, you remove the standing meetings and go through the posting as Marla suggested, but just as a supplement, an explanatory note so that people are aware that they do exist if needed. Is that basically it? It's more of a footnote saying, yeah, we don't have them, but they could be called, so pay attention. Is that basically it, Commissioner Obert? Yeah.
That's it.
All right, Commissioner
Yeah,
Morano?
I could put that on the main page of the Wetlands Commission to indicate that as generally, if a site walk is needed, it would be held the Saturday before the meeting. I can put that on if you want. That's where the place where it would go.
Just put a note. I mean, it's
Mhm.
compliment, sort of a compromise. Commissioner Morano, any thoughts on this, or you?
It makes that all makes sense.
Okay, so I like the modification. I just thought we have all these. We don't want to forget that we have these things. We're supposed to walk, and it's always a rush to make sure they get canceled. So let's try it the other way until such time as it doesn't work. So number one, I think we're going to remove the site walks and post a note that they'll be scheduled as we discussed. Number two, the change dates that are recommended, I don't have any problem with those changes. Does anyone else object to the recommended changes that, you know, the holiday conflicts, I guess, is what we deconflict with the holidays.
But
It
would
looks
they,
looks
would we-
reasonable.
One at a time. Commissioner Overt?
yeah, would we still require them if we weren't having a Saturday site walk? It wouldn't matter what Tuesday was in relationship to the holiday.
Yeah. If sidewalks are, you know, if at high as needed, right? So that's what they're going to be. And so then we're just dealing with meetings, those to deconflict the meetings with the long weekends, I guess is what we're talking about. So that's one thing. Commissioner Chapin, how do you feel on that?
I'm fine leaving them where they are, but, you know, I have animals, so I don't go away much.
All right. How about Commissioner Morano? How do you feel about the deconflicting recommendation?
I'll go with the majority on that.
All right. My recommendation to everyone, and you know, do we even have to vote on this? Is a voting requirement, or you just want to make sure we're on consensus? My recommendation is that we remove the sidewalks and as we discuss, and adopt or reframe the dates to deconflict these holidays.
So what you're saying is I'll remove the site walks,
Yes.
and for the regular meeting in April, it would be April 4th instead of April 11th.
Right.
That would take it away from the Good Friday,
Right.
Easter
Exactly.
weekend.
Right.
And then for the Tuesday, October 11th, would move that to October 14th or October 17th. October 17th would be a week later, like you did this year.
Yeah. Is there a reason why we wouldn't go to the 14th? The sooner the better, I guess.
Question might be meeting date. That's all. I'm not sure if there's other meetings that are on that date. If we're back out of Zoom.
Right. I gotta say we're gonna be physically
know
there, but
where.
we'll deal with that when we get there. I mean, that's the logistics. I mean, we'll speak to.
I would go with the 17th then, which would be a week later, still on a Tuesday.
Right. All right. I mean, I have no objection to that. Let's go with the 17th, and if there's a conflict, then we'll deal with it when we get there. All right. That's my recommendation. Any further discussion or objection, or we can just move on?
Move on.
All right. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Moving on, we've got, there's the schedule again. Other business, revision to planning and zoning, to zoning regulations.
Okay, hold on, writing notes. 17, okay. All right, you may or may not be aware that the hearing for the proposed amendments to the zoning regulations was held or opened. I believe it was on the 27th of October. And there was a failure of publishing of the legal notices for the hearing. They're required to be twice. One at least 10 days before the meeting, at least. And then the second, at least 2 days before the meeting, but at least 7 days after the first one. And neither of them were posted. So the Planning and Zoning Commission continued the hearing to the following Monday, which was October 20. Let me see, it would have been October 31st, I think it was. I might have my weeks off by 1 week, but any case, they decided that they would hold it. They would publish their legal notice and hold it at 3 weeks later, and come to find out that the legal notices that got published in the Villager, the heading said special meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so the legal notice is they're holding a special meeting tomorrow night to set a new date and try to get the proper legal notices published for the hearing. They read my memo. It was about 8 pages long, into the record on the first night. And I'm presuming that they will re-enter that in as a document. I did notice that they didn't have any exhibits identified. Typically when I've seen regulations changed, or whenever you have a contentious application that has a hearing, you assign documents exhibit numbers. So for example, the first thing would be, what is the language of the proposed change? That would be exhibit 1. Exhibit 2 would be the first legal notice. Exhibit 3 would be the second legal notice. Exhibit 4 might be staff memo, whatever. Then exhibit 5 might be the email comments that were received
Okay,
by
so they
one
didn't have the
person.
exhibits, right? Okay, there's no exhibits.
Yeah, they didn't have that. So anyways, stay tuned. But my job with the zoning regulations is done. I don't
Okay.
plan to do any more work on that.
Right. Thank you for contributing, and hopefully it help inform the commissioners on the Planning and Zoning Commission as to the environmental issues. Thank you. All right.
Thank you,
Anything else?
Marla. You've done a lot, and I understand how you could say your job with planning and zoning is done. I do hope, though, we can verify that this information will be included in the official report when they finally get around to having their legally notified.
So we'll have to try to have, hopefully the public will turn out and bring up these issues. Thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to the next item we have is the other business, proposed revisions and subdivision. Did we already talk about that as a duplicate?
No,
Oh,
no,
it's
one is zoning
subdivision. Yep,
regulations.
right.
The
Subdivision.
subdivision regulations, I'm deep in the weeds of reviewing the entire document. That process was put on hold, the revisions to the subdivision regulations.
Right.
First of all, if you recall, I had requested the Planning and Zoning Commission not render a decision on the subdivision regulations until they had the zoning issues resolved.
Right.
So they're in the process of resolving the zoning issues. While they were resolving the zoning issues, they still continued with working on the subdivision regulations and found that because they didn't have any standards for road construction that they could rely on, they hired Janet Blanchette of J&D Engineering to draft up the Appendix C for the subdivision regulations dealing with road construction. She has supplied that about 2 weeks ago or so, and shortly thereafter, Tira sent a notification to the subcommittee members as well as the staff that have been reviewing it, that she was going to have another meeting, special meeting for the subcommittee to go over the changes, and she provided us with a complete copy of the entire set of the subdivision regulation draft. And because there's been so many changes and additions and modifications, I've started going through them in detail. And I'm finding a lot of minor errors, some of them significant errors. And one of the errors that I saw, and I need to talk to you about it because it involves the inland wetlands regulations that I'll be working on this winter,
Right.
is they have added into their regulations a requirement for submitting conceptual subdivision application and then a subsequent individual permit. And I'm going to be suggesting to the commission that the Wetlands Commission, that you eliminate the conceptual subdivision drawing in lieu of an individual permit with a prohibition not to transfer any building lots that are covered under that permit, but rather that a new application must be received for any properties that are sold out of the original subdivision. So that way you're not conceptually approving something before you have all the hydraulics and all the other nuances that you need to know that somebody could get a permit for. So I'm coming up with some language that will eliminate the planning and zoning making reference to conceptual subdivision plan application being made to the Wetlands Commission. Rather just say submit an application, and then the Wetlands Commission can later decide what kind of application that should be, if it should be conceptual or just an individual permit application, which is what I'm thinking that my recommendation is going to be to you.
Okay.
So if you have no objection to that, that's the recommendation that I'm going to be giving to them, is to remove that particular language. But there's other citations. There's citations for tidal wetlands that should be inland
Okay.
wetlands,
Perhaps
things
you
like
could frame your
that.
recommendations
So-
and circulate it to the commissioners so we can respond.
Right, and I know Tara said that she wanted to try to get the subdivision regs done by the end of the year, and I don't see how they're gonna do it with all of the changes that the concerns that I'm identifying.
Sure.
They're gonna need at least 1 or 2 more subcommittee meetings
Right.
Even after they review the other stuff
They
that
all,
she's
they all
already
have
provided them.
aspirational goals, and I guess that those are
Mhm.
hers. All right, thank you for that update, and we'll be looking forward to reviewing your recommendations. All right, subdivision. Next item is the DOT bridge number 02128, replacement Route 112 Sunset Brook.
Okay, so on page 41 of the Zoom documents, you'll see a locus map for it. This is on Route 12, right near La Porte Road.
Right.
And they just finished paving that road. And now they're going to talk about replacing the culvert underneath it. So it's a very large package that they emailed me, and I didn't want to put it all in the Zoom documents, but on page 42 gives you a brief summary of what it is that they are going to do for a new bridge. They'll have bridge abutments. It's not going to be a box culvert. It's going to be an actual bridge with riprap on each side of the abutments. And they have on page 43 a construction diagram identifying how they're going to be building. It looks like they're going to be, I don't know how they're going to sequence to keep the traffic going on. I haven't had a chance to really look through the application to make sure that they maintain traffic flow. Because when you build a bridge, usually you have to do one-way traffic for a while you build one part, and then you have to do another, or you have to have a detour.
Great. Yeah,
And that's a major roadway, when the detour would have to be going on local roads, I would think.
I see.
So they identify on page 43 is the Wetlands Watercourse Impact Plan. And I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to mean. So I have a call into the Department of Transportation's Environmental Planning Office to talk to them about exactly what is it that they're going to do? What's their timing for this? When are they planning on doing it? What kinds of water handling plans do they have? It's all within the control of the state DEEP. And I don't even know if the Wetlands Commission has the ability to have much say whether or not a permit's already been issued for this or not, or whether it comes under a general permit. I'm not sure, but just wanted to give you the heads up that they're
Okay.
talking about replacing the bridge on Stout Brook.
Thank you. Commissioners, any comments or questions?
Any information about timeline?
Not yet. That's what I'm waiting to get a call back from DOT.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. More diagrams. So then we have citizens' comments on agenda items. This is the second opportunity during our meeting for citizens to comment. Any citizens? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Budget and expenditures.
Hold the phone. I gotta get the mute button.
No worries.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin, so our available budget from July 1st through 10/28 is $21,096.79. We had encumbrances this past month of $225.34, which appears to be a storage cabinet and some office supplies, and we have expended 23.1% of our budget.
Okay, 23%, and we're on track for the from a chronological standpoint. Thank you
Yep.
very much. Any
You're
questions
welcome.
of Commissioner Chapin? Hearing none, we're moving on to Wetlands Agent Report.
Okay, under updates, Selectman St. Ange has transferred all MS4 responsibilities from the Wetlands Office. I have forwarded all hard copies of documents in my possession to Kelly Jennis at the Public Works Department. The town has hired J&D to do some of the MS4 reporting and work and modification of the annual plan, stormwater management plan, and the illicit discharge elimination plan, IDDE. As soon as I finish reviewing the current version of the draft subdivision regulation amendments, I plan to finish drafting the inland wetlands regulation amendments and get them to you for your review and consideration and comment. And since I'm almost out of file space, I'll need to submit a records disposal request and finish the disposal of the pre-1990 permit files. I have one box left. All right, under inspections and follow-up actions, George, if you could go to Zoom page 47. Well, back up. Could you go to page 20 of the Zoom documents? Okay, this is regards 81 New Road.
This is page 20.
Okay. Yep. You see the big yellow circle?
Yes.
That's the area that I'm going to be talking about, the big yellow circle. 81 New Road is down the street. It would be the lot that you see just on the lower left corner of the circle. The yellow, that one. That's 81. Okay. At the request of the Public Works staff on October 19th, I participated in a site visit with First Selectman St. Ange and other town staff and Don Pimentel, a neighbor to 81 New Road, to identify the cause of significant siltation of New Road from erosion at 81 New Road. Recently, the lawn was, by the way, that's a modular home that was built on that site. Recently, the lawn was finished, graded, seeded, and mulched. Neither Evander de Oliveira, the owner of 81 New Road, nor her son, Cleverson Oliveira, who lives at the property, were in attendance. Runoff from the new lawn area had concentrated and eroded the fill embankment adjacent to the road, creating several rills up to a foot deep. It was reported that the basement to this modular home had flooded during construction. Dan Malo and I, along with Mr. Pimentel, investigated conditions uphill from this property, walking through Mr. Pimentel's property. Now, could you go to page 47, George?
Sure. Hold on.
Water was flowing. Okay.
Okay.
Backing up. Dan Malo and I, along with Mr. Pimentel, investigated conditions uphill from this property, walking through Mr. Pimentel's property all the way to the Rhode Island border, following the former Star Road alignment. The water was flowing from the former Star Road alignment near the state border, but disappeared into the ground before reaching Mr. Pimentel's property. While the initial cause of the siltation was caused from unstable lawn conditions, I have concerns that during frozen ground conditions and high flow conditions, which can occur during the spring thaw, 81 New Road may see water flow from the Pimentel property, flooding the lawn and possibly the home. You see the yellow line with the blue arrows
Yes.
in the upper right-hand corner? That's the old Star Road alignment. And water flows down the road. There's no water flowing in it at that location, but it has when the ground is frozen, and it comes off of the Star Road alignment and goes into Mr. Pimentel's property, which is known as 40 Star Road. From there, it disappears. It stays in a channel for a short period of time. And if you go to the next page 48, George, I am looking up from the end of the yellow arrow that comes off of Star Road. You see this, the material that is
Right.
that is there in the foreground of the picture? That is evidence of concentrated water flow coming off the hill from Star Road into Mr. Pimentel's property. If you could go back up to the map again on page 47.
Okay.
Once the water gets into Mr. Pimentel's property, it dissipates. It stops being a confined flow, but then reemerges as a confined flow farther down slope, which is where you see the yellow start to show up with more arrows. The arrows indicate concentrated flow. So this concentrated flow, the areas that redevelop are heading right towards lot 2B, which is 81 New Road. Now, none of this on 81 New Road has a wetland or water course or is involved in a wetland or water course. So the commission does not have any jurisdiction on this. However, to address to address the immediate concern, I contacted the builder, Brian Young of Fuller Building Company LLC, who agreed to contact Mr. Oliviera to get the immediate problem addressed. A site visit on 10/25/22 revealed the rills were filled, the erosion control blankets and 3 tiers of straw wattles were installed. Siltation of the road has been abated, at least temporarily. I have forwarded to Mr. Oliviera maps of the surrounding conditions and information on water diversions with a recommendation that he contact me after he has reviewed the information to potentially avoid future problems. At this time, there are no wetlands or watercourses threatened. I was also told by the builder that that this home had its basement flooded last spring. So I'm concerned that he's in an area similar to what we saw on other parts of New Road, where he's going to be the recipient of significant amounts of water when the ground is frozen. But the Wetlands Commission isn't involved. I'm just providing that as assistance to him because I'm concerned that he is going to get flooded
Sure.
again, and we're going to see more erosion problems.
It's not a jurisdiction then
um,
on this matter.
No, correct. There is no jurisdiction that I could find at this point in
Right.
time. It's just assistance. I reviewed 7 building permits. And in the next, under miscellaneous, in the next month or so, I'll be working with our new recording secretary, Gloria Harvey, to bring her up to speed with the Wetlands Office procedures and protocols. By the way, Gloria is on the meeting tonight.
Welcome, Gloria. We saw you
And-
earlier.
Yep. And so I'll be working with her to ensure that our notices are properly set and the
Thank you.
minutes and agendas are properly recorded. There she is. Hi, Gloria.
Great.
Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Gloria. Welcome.
Hi,
aboard.
Gloria.
Hi.
Welcome
Nice to
aboard.
meet you all.
Thank you.
Gloria.
Too.
And then lastly, I have some purchase requisitions and I did order some office supplies from WB Mason. I needed a few things like a stapler that somehow got misplaced and disappeared, whatever. And then the others were just legal notices for Stonebridge Press newspapers.
Great.
One thing that I did want to ask you before, and it's not in my monthly report, but I wanted to ask you your opinion on it. When last we talked about the regulations, we talked about fee schedule and I was comparing things from other towns. And I've been thinking about it for quite some time. And I'm starting to bend towards a fee schedule that's based on the extent of involvement or alteration or destruction of wetlands, meaning the more you propose to destroy or pipe a water course or alter a water course by linear feet, the more you'll have to pay for your permit. Only because the more work that there is in wetlands and water courses, the more review time is needed to ensure that there's not a problem. If it's in the upland review area, it's not a big deal, generally speaking. But if it's actually in wetlands or water courses, that would tend to minimize people's work in wetlands because it'll be cheaper for them to take the alternative of less impact to wetlands or water courses. That's the thought that I'm going with right now for the fee schedule. I just haven't gotten all the details straightened out in my mind. If you have no objection to me pursuing that in that direction, I will do that when I get to the fee schedule. And I'd like your feedback on that. That's one item.
Okay, well, let's see what the commissioners have to say. Commissioner Albert?
That makes sense to fluctuate the rate based on the amount of work that they intend to do.
Commissioner Chapin?
Well, I would guess I would be interested in like, what are you talking about? Like $80 versus $200, $80 versus $2,000? Because sometimes I think people have properties where it's unavoidable if you want to build on your property that you are going to go through a wetland. So I'm just interested in, what your thought is there. I mean, to me,
So
I
I'm
guess
thinking that it would be ranges, like this much to this much would be one range. And this much to this much would be another range, would be another fee, so that it wouldn't be by the square footage, it would be by a range of work.
okay.
I'm not sure
Do
yet
you have
how.
an idea in your head, like what the low end is and what the high end is?
Well, whatever we do would have to cover the cost of the legal notices and the $60 fee that the state has. So
Okay.
that's with no work in wetlands. And that's
Okay.
$110, and it doesn't really cover the cost now. So the price is gonna have to go up anyways. But I was thinking something on, I really hadn't gotten that far, Diane. So if you have
Okay,
any
I'm
suggestions,
not, I
I'm
don't
more
have
than
any, I
happy.
don't have any set objection. I'm just trying to understand
Sure.
whether
Yeah.
or not I conceptually agree with this, or, I might conceptually disagree with it, but I would say definitely explore it. I don't have a problem with you exploring it.
Okay.
I mean, I wish there was a way around those stupid legal notices, because what an antiquated system that is. I mean, that's, to me, that's the bigger waste of money. And rather than adjusting fees higher, how about eliminating fees, because we're following a process that was created in 1910. I don't know that we can solve that here,
Unfortunately,
but that's
No.
what makes me like
Yeah.
perturbed.
Thank you,
That's
Commissioner Chapin.
That's a legislative change.
Yeah.
It's nothing
Well-
that we have control over.
There you go. That's why that's why there's a problem.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have some new legislators to help us going forward. But moving on to Commissioner Morano, how do you feel about this?
It sounds reasonable.
All right. I'd like to see a comparison merely about how does it compare to what we do now, but in theory, as long as there's, cost benefit and something that's practical, I think makes sense. So I guess I'd like to see it written down and what it looks like.
Yep.
So
Well, I just wanted to know if you would have any objection to me
no
pursuing that.
objection, no
Because
objection.
I'll give you analysis from
Right.
what other towns are doing and what we do now
Yeah.
and what I would suggest we do.
Okay,
The
great.
second
No.
issue is, I would like to be authorized under uses permitted as of right for maintenance and enjoyment of residential home for work. Currently the statute only talks about work in wetlands and water courses, and it doesn't talk about work in the upland review area. And I would like to have sign-offs for, like Mr. O'Brien's application. I don't think that should have to come to the Wetlands Commission.
The deck.
I think I should be able to sign off on that without
Yes.
having that delay. But that would have to be in the regulations to say that I have that authority.
Yep, I would go with that.
We have to have a separate, do you need a vote
Nope.
you need to modify? Or is that
Nope,
future?
I'll create the language in the
Draft it,
revisions
it.
that I'm working on.
All right.
And there was a third one, but I can't think of what it is now. But anyways. All right, so that'll be coming probably in the next, within the next month or so. I'll get started on that again.
Great. All right. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. So no correspondence, no Mylars, comments by commissioners. Commissioner Obert? I can't hear you. You need to unmute your mic, Commissioner.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. The letter that Marla read from the Grays, I would like to have a copy of that forwarded to all of the members of the Board of Selectmen and to the people on P and Z, and a cover letter that says the issues that we're facing because there's been lack of communication and lack of consistency have to be addressed.
Interesting recommendation, Commissioner. Other commissioners, any thoughts on that? It's certainly already in the public record, so it's not like we're, pulling something out that hasn't been, but you want a broader audience, which is the intent. And if I understand Commissioner Obert's recommendation is to help frame the, in a short, like 3 or 4 bullet points in the cover, the underlying issues, because the letter is detailed and goes into a lot of points, but I think it's important to highlight it, recap it, like in the news, right? You get the answers in about 2 sentences. If you want to read the story, it follows. So something along those lines. Is that the spirit of what you're suggesting, Commissioner Obert?
That's it, yes.
Yeah. Well, if I could add, I'd suggest that it makes perfect sense to me, and it's not, it's already public information. Any commissioners object to that recommendation with Commissioner Obert?
If Marla doesn't have an objection, then I'm good with it. I kind of feel like it's, one party's perspective. Obviously, something needs to be resolved with this, but, some of it is, it has its own issues. So
Yeah.
Marla, if you If you don't find any objection to it, feel free, but. I guess I was thinking that, Marla would do the recapping of the
Yes,
information and reach out to the appropriate boards rather than having, and if she, I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Like she could bullet point her perspective on it. And then if they want to look at the public record, they could, but
That was my, too.
yeah, I like that plan better because I feel
Yeah.
like forwarding somebody else's letter. I'm not saying this shouldn't be addressed. Clearly it should be addressed, but I think forwarding somebody else's letter as the starting
Yeah.
point for the conversation is not the right way to approach it, in my opinion.
good point. And also you could incorporate by reference the fact that it was brought up during if they want to read the text, it's here. So they can look it up.
Because the Grays have made allegations of claims that I told them they could do what they wanted to do, I think any notification to other commissions and Board of Selectmen should come from the commission itself. I'm happy to draft a letter for your consideration at the next meeting to decide whether or not you want that language to move forward. But I don't feel comfortable sending my suggestions or my concerns or complaints to the Board of Selectmen independently and the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think it really should come from the commission. If the commission wants others to be notified, I'd be happy to draft it. Then you can discuss it and decide if you want modifications or changes.
So you're saying you'll develop your recommendation.
Yeah.
Recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we will be
Consider it.
please put that forward.
To put it in there. Looks like we've lost Commissioner Obert too.
Yeah,
Just a
I didn't know whether this is the place to state my concerns about that, but let's just say that I have some
Let's
allegations.
frame what you're going to do. Yeah. Okay. And the allegations are, maybe we should review that with council and any
Yeah.
response too. Perhaps we'll look at that
great,
as well.
great. I'll done on that, George.
Yeah, let's do that. If you want to respond, Commissioner Obert's, I think was perhaps well intended, but we have to look at the consequences of making such a recommendation. So I guess we'll take it under advisement and take a look at what it might look like, and then we can decide at a later date. All
So
right.
I'll draft something for you. I'll forward it to you via email, and then you can discuss it at the next meeting.
Right. There you
How
go.
about that?
Thank you. Let's let it cool a bit and reflect. I have any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Morano or Commissioner Chapin?
I'm good.
All right.
No.
Morano? Fran? No. Okay. As chair, I have nothing further to say other than it's good to have concerns of citizens brought up, but it's important, I think, to have actionable next steps before we go forward and base that on informed advice, recommendations by subject matter experts for some of these issues are technical. And although everyone wants a quick solution, sometimes that's not best, and we want to make sure we do them deliberately. So those are my observations. So with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Let's make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yeah, Commissioner Chapin, I'll second it.
Motion made and second. And no objections. This meeting is concluded. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye.